Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Football Fandemic. Coming back after a 3-week hiatus, we're ready to talk playoff seeding. We're ready to talk playoff berths. We're ready to talk players who love players, all that and more here on the Football Fandemic. All right, guys, we are back. Maybe it's only been 2 weeks. I think I said 3 weeks in the intro. But it's been an eventful 2 weeks. I had a tree down. Kept me from even getting here to the studio, my office, a couple weeks ago, or last week. And then I've been sick. But we are back to talk about football because a lot has happened in the world of football in the last 2 weeks. And we need to discuss it with all of you lovely people out there in the world. So we're going to do that, and we're going to start how we always start with some of the big news and headlines that are going on around the NFL. And this time of year, you can always bet that some of that news is going to be like which teams have fired X, whether it's a head coach or a GM, or you can't really fire players. I guess you can cut them. But what do we have in the way of news, whether it's that or anything else that has happened in these last couple weeks?
Well, I'll tell you what, the Chicago Bears have been very active in bringing people in for interviews. It looks like anyone that is on the board, they're bringing in for a possibility, even to the point where they reached out to Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, and they said, we want Mike McCarthy to come in for an interview.
What?
Our next head coach. And of course, Jerry Jones said, absolutely not. Mike McCarthy is my guy. So I don't think we're going to see a Mike McCarthy firing.
And you know what? All of the Dallas fans are sad that he would not let him. I don't know that he is super loved for the amount of work or amount of wins he's gotten in his tenure at Dallas.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Green Bay does not want him in Chicago. We have a street just down the road from me called McCarthy Way. We gave that to him. He holds a special place here in this city. We don't want him in Chicago.
It was nice of you guys to name that street after the future franchise quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, by the way.
Not if he gets traded. Not if he gets traded.
But now that's speculation that I hear every time anybody talks about the Vikings because of how well they did. Isn't that crazy? You usually don't get that kind of talk when when you draft who everybody thinks is going to be like the next great quarterback, and everybody's excited about it, and he gets hurt in training camp. Everybody's like, okay, he'll be back next year, uncontested. But then you guys did so good with Sam Darnold. And then, I heard him on the television the other day, talking about like, oh, we got Drew Lock there, or not Drew Lock. Is it Drew?
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones. The two I can never keep apart. Daniel Jones, you got Sam Darnold, you got this guy, and then they even threw in another one, and I'm like, what? Somebody they thought should be, it was just mind-boggling to me. But what do you think about all that talk, Josh?
I believe in J.J. McCarthy, and Sam Darnold's performance on Sunday night kind of made me more confident about that. I was leaning before that game. I was leaning a little bit more towards, maybe we tag Sam Darnold and he can stay for another year. I still don't think I had any interest in like a long-term extension, but he missed a lot of throws and missed a lot of reads. Like he kind of reverted back heavily in that game against the Lions to being kind of the guy that he was with the New York Jets. Now that's potentially probably a fluke, or we hope so here in I'm in Arizona, but in Minnesota they all hope it's a little bit of a fluke. And it was, by far his worst game of the season. So hopefully heading into the playoffs that changes a little bit, but I think that can kind of show you just how low his floor can go if he starts seeing those ghosts again, which I think was kind of the case on Sunday night.
Well, I don't want to jump into that game early, but I will say that Detroit defense looked different than it's looked most of the year as well. Aggressively different. And some of that I think might have been on like the coaching not getting the right schemes in there too to give him some time and different looks. But we can talk all about that in a bit when we talk about that game. What other news has happened in the world?
I know there's been a big point of discussion with the Bengals on Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow? Are they going to stay together through this offseason? Is Jamar Chase potentially going elsewhere? What are you guys' thoughts on this? I think he was one of the better receivers we had this season. It would be hard for me to imagine they say, yeah, Jamar Chase, we don't want anything to do with you next year.
Yeah, in fact, he was probably the best wide receiver. He won the triple crown for receiving, most catches, most yards, most touchdowns. He was phenomenal, and they better hope to keep him and sign him to a long-term deal. I think they will. The question is, what do you do then with T. Higgins, who is like, when you have to double team Jamar Chase, T. Higgins can be a number one receiver for a lot of these teams, and he showed that down the stretch, especially this year. So if I'm the Bengals, I feel like I need to move some money around to keep both of those weapons around Joe Burrow, because as long as the defense kind of stays as is, I don't trust them getting the job done, but I do trust that offense to put up points against whoever it is they're going up against in a week-in basis.
Yeah, if T. Higgins is not in Cincinnati, I'd love for him to be in Green Bay next season.
I think if you had to choose between those two receivers, they would be better to get their money in on Chase and find somebody else who can play the T. Higgins role, who can be reliable when they need to. But Burrow and Chase from day one, because they came in the same year, right? I think
Burrow and Higgins came in the same year, and then Chase was the next year, yeah.
And when Chase got there, they started looking much better. They had great chemistry, great connection, and it just seems like to let that go, that would be a mistake. And T. Higgins, you want to keep everybody. Sometimes you can't. Hopefully they can, like you said, move some money around. They also got to do something with some of their defensive players. So there's got to be some money for that. But if they can't get all the money for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I would say let T. Higgins go to a big contract somewhere, because he will get a big contract somewhere, and find somebody to take that place. That's what I would do. But yeah.
In the other world of receivers, we have someone that I think allegedly is not too satisfied in his position, the cheetah himself, Tyreek Hill, down in Miami, potentially looking for a new team.
I don't know that it was so hidden. He said, basically, show me the door. I'm out, bro.
Yeah, I think the use of the term allegedly is like in the same sort of when newspapers just have to use allegedly to describe a criminal activity, even though you can see like they've caught him on camera red-handed, but they still have, like, Tyreek Hill said that he wants out. He it started out, it was kind of funny because I was like, yeah, I'll do whatever's best for me and my family. He was kind of just like doing football speak, and then in his mind he's like, you know what? Whatever, I'm just gonna say it, and then says, "I want out of here." Yeah, I'm gone. Yep. I'm gone.
Yeah. So it's a matter of will they honor that, or will they somehow convince him to throw back in with the Dolphins again? Who, by the way, every year the Dolphins seem to have like a lot of hope behind them, and every year they seem to just fall flatter than can be. Like, as the year progresses, they get worse.
Yeah, it's really the start of December through the rest of the season. They have nothing going for them. It's like all of their energy is concentrated on the first 75%. And then that last 25%, they fall off. It's like you've seen those pictures of 3 different stages of drawing a horse. And it's like the first one is an absolute masterpiece. And then the second one is like a high school student. And then the head of the horse was drawn by a kindergartner. A
line drawing. Yeah. Yeah. And so, earlier in this year, we were talking about coaches, and I feel like some of you guys were like, oh, Mike McDaniel's job is safe. Do you still feel like that?
No. Going into next season, I think he's going to be on the hot seat. I think it's safe for this offseason. I don't think he's at risk of going anywhere within the next, like, if they decide to fire him in the next week. But I think it's definitely on the table. I think, he'll be on the hot seat going into next year, and he could be fired midway through the year, especially if they don't have Tyreek Hill. They're going to have to find some other way to get that offense humming. And Jalen Waddle is good, but he's not Tyreek Hill, and now he has to fill that role. And then who's going to fill the Jalen Waddle role? So I think there is a chance for him to be on the hot seat, and he's really going to have to work to create a good offense if they don't have Tyreek Hill. He's going to earn his spot if he stays with the team.
Yeah. Definitely.
I do have a question. So Tyreek Hill is out. to me, there's like three sort of teams I could see him being really interested in. I have one is going to Atlanta. I feel like he would just fit really well in there. I have no idea Atlanta's cap situation, if they could pull in something for a Tyreek Hill. But I think him and Michael Penix Jr. would work really well together. You have Drake London there. You have Kyle Pitts. Maybe he can have a resurgence like he did in his rookie year, putting another weapon on that offense. I don't really think you need Darnell Mooney there anymore. But putting Tyreek Hill in Atlanta, I think makes sense. I think he would fit into the Atlanta culture pretty well. Another team I don't think he'll go to, but I feel like he fits really well as a receiver if he went to Vegas. He just seems like he has the Vegas moxie in him.
He definitely, yeah. I agree with that. Especially, if they're in the market for a new head coach, and could they get Deion Sanders and then trade up to draft Shadur Sanders and pair him with Tyreek Hill, and then you're off and running right there. And then the other one, what did you say? There was three that you had in mind?
Yeah, and the last one, I feel like he's an LA boy at heart. Like he's going to be a Charger, and Justin Herbert is just going to throw the ball as far as he physically can, and somehow it's going to be underthrown going to Tyreek Hill. Just having a fast guy in that offense with Harbaugh as the coach, I think he would fit really well there.
I think that would potentially be the best spot. I would also say Kansas City Chiefs again. It could be a potential, like if he decides to go back there. I don't know if it's gonna be him just getting traded for like a mid-round pick or what, and I don't know the Chiefs contract the cap situation there either, but I could definitely see him trying to force his way back to Kansas City to play with Patrick Mahomes again.
Yeah.
Even after all the conversations of we'll see who's best when we go head to head, the cheetah or because when he first went to Miami, he was like, you guys all think Patrick Mahomes is what makes that team so good. I got news for you, but then everybody's like, no, it is Patrick Mahomes that makes that team so good.
I think the image of him coming back with his tail tucked between his legs.
But does he take that posture ever?
Yeah, that's true. But I feel like the image of everyone else in the league will be that. Like no matter how confident he says, "Oh yeah, whatever," I feel like the image that most people will have of him is still that tail being tucked between the legs and like Patrick Mahomes telling him to kiss the ring or whatever. So.
Yeah. I don't know what's super important to Tyreek behind the scenes. I know a number of players are looking for a state with no income tax, which would put Dallas at another option, Dallas or Houston. And I feel like Mike McCarthy's like, yeah, we could put Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb paired together. And what are defenses going to do to prepare for that?
It definitely make it better for Dak Prescott to have a couple like that out there.
Or Trey Lance, whoever's starting to knock at their bonus at the end of the season.
Yeah. That's a whole thing for another time. 'Cause I have no idea what exactly Dallas is going to do to right their ship, because it did not look right this year in any way. There was nothing about it that was like, what, this part's inspiring to me, because they have CeeDee Lamb and CeeDee Lamb's good, but that didn't look good. I don't know. It's a mess. It's a mess in Jerry land. All right. Here's another one. I'm a Colts fan, obviously. Everybody thought Chris Ballard, everybody in Colts Nation is tired of Chris Ballard. Everybody's like, he's had 8 years and we have not gone to the playoffs. Or maybe we went once and got knocked out right away. I don't even know if we did that.
Yeah,
but
you went with Phillip Rivers.
And we've cycled through coaches, and so people were questioning. I think more people had the wherewithal to say, you know what, Shane Steichen, let's give him another. But it's not the glowing. The pail is off the rose there with Shane Steichen. He was like, everybody was cheering for him. He's great. That's not so much right now. It's like, hey, he's got one more year, or he needs to be out too. And of course, everybody in the chat's like, no, what they're going to do is they're going to keep both of them and sacrifice Gus Bradley. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. Jim Irsay came out and said, I believe in Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, and we're going to do everything we can to win you games. And then, like a couple days later, Gus Bradley fired. Everybody knew he would be. We were horrible with him. So the truth is, I'm very uninspired going into this next year that we're going to be any better next year. I mean, maybe, but you just get, you hear the same promises year after year, and you just keep looking like a very mediocre team year after year. You start to lose hope. But then, something can happen out of nowhere, and you can have a coach come in like in Minnesota, and suddenly everybody's like, yes. I guess you guys weren't mediocre every year, but
there were
are.
peaks and valleys in Minnesota, right? It was just
Right.
all one-score games was the difference between perfection and complete destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
For us, we don't even know if our quarterback is going to make the step that he needs to become good, because he just doesn't play enough. Even here in the end of this, I was like, my hope was let AR play this season out. Let's see who he is. Oh, he's having back spasms. So last 2 games, Joe Flacco. And did I believe we would win with Joe Flacco? No. We come against New York. I know I'm going back in time a little bit here, but we haven't been on the show. New York was just embarrassment. That's like a 2-win team. They had the first overall pick in the draft until they beat us by putting up like 41, 45, a lot of points against our great defense. And it was just embarrassing all over. Joe Flacco looked horrible. And then, of course, you would know going into the last game, the Jags we would beat the Jags, which was also a really bad team. It's embarrassing. The bad thing is, against that really bad team that we beat, we had to go to overtime to even beat them. We're just so good. So anyway, not getting to see AR play in those last 2 games, just watching Joe Flacco out there, I have absolutely nothing in me that says, oh yeah, Joe Flacco, he could stay here for a while and do stuff. He's probably not even going to be our backup next year. Let's be honest. So what did we learn? Nothing. So if I'm a coach, like, what am I doing there? And of course, if it was truly back spasms, but then you start to think, okay, is AR that super physically gifted guy that just needs to play more, except he's like paper mache? It seems like he gets hurt all the time. And he's always going to be hurt a little bit. That's not going to do well for us. I do think we will play through next season trying to see what we got in him. And I think if he does not perform next season, the team moves on. If he does perform and doesn't, get banged up all the time and out all the time, maybe he'll step up and become, because I think when he's in, he gives us more options. He can throw well. When he gets his targeting down, he can run. He changes up what defenses have to do, and he's good at it, but he's still got to get better. Anyway, that's a whole, I don't even know how I got on that. Oh, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are coming back. So I don't know exactly how this team is going to be built. And here's the thing. I think Chris Ballard drafts super well. I think he's a really good draft GM. I think he is a horrible free agent GM, pretty much. I know that, like, in the draft, we got DeForest Buckner for pick 13, and I feel like I can live with that. I'm like, yeah, man, DeForest Buckner has been good. But, everything has said that the culture in the locker room is just not one that people are working hard. Nobody's working hard. And Buck was one of the ones that said that in his last interview. And so that falls on a coach, not on a GM. They need to get tougher with the people in the locker room. But he did say, the fact that players, our GM doesn't bring in players from outside. There's no fear of that. People who were here, free agents, they get, money. And there's kind of this sense that you're going to get paid if you do okay. And so maybe it is some on the GM. Regardless, next year something's got to change if we have the same result.
Well, I do want to pose a question before I weigh in on my 2 cents. There's another gentleman, also AR, maybe has played his last game in the NFL, Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yes.
What's I have my opinion, but I'm going to save those till last. I want to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, I think he, as the season went on, especially became less frenzied with the football. It seemed like early on in the season, he was like a scared cat, like needing to get the football away, partially because he can't move out of the way with the ankle. But as the ankle healed, he still wasn't great on the run, but still could get out of the pocket a little bit more. And he let plays develop a little bit more. So he didn't have to kind of have those frenzied throws. I mean, he's still as accurate as ever. He's still got the arm talent. He's still got the football IQ. The only thing is the mobility is down a little bit, but he's more mobile than like Kirk Cousins. Like if you compare how both of their seasons went with the Achilles injury, I mean, it all depends on what he wants to do, but if he wants to come back for more seasons, I think the Jets would be silly not to let him back. And if they don't let him back and want to trade him, then I think he'd be a good pickup for whatever team he ends up going to.
I think it may be that, okay, New York, and particularly the Jets, is one of the roughest places to play fandom-wise. You're under a huge spotlight, and people are all for you until they're not, and then they're all against you. And I feel like he was so vaunted. He's going to save us from this drought we've been in. He's going to come in and fix things. He brought so many of his own people. This is going to be great. And he's got Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, and he's got these young playmakers. He's going to come in and show them how to do it, and everybody was excited. That ended 4 seconds in the first year, and they're like, okay, well, that happened, so we'll just kind of see what happens this year. But this year, he played, and it was not good for the Jets. They never looked good. And then Garrett Wilson, and it started to surface that Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers have beef with one another. That something's going on there, and I don't even know what it is. But I can very much see that ownership getting to the point where they're like, you know what, we tried the experiment for 2 years and it didn't work. Get rid of him, and we'll find the next person. Will that make them better? I don't know. I don't know when they'll ever get better again. But I think he probably. I don't know, but I think he probably won't play for the Jets. Now, I'm going to quote a very astute and intelligent person, and I may be stealing his thunder, who said this guy is very close to, 500 touchdowns or whatever that I can't remember who, Peyton Manning, the record.
He's close to passing Brett Favre. He went over 500, but now he's
within 6 touchdowns of passing Brett Favre's
all-time
record.
So will this guy stop being that close? If you think that, you don't know the competitiveness of Aaron Rodgers. Quoting Brandon Colmark, I think there, which may have been what you were going to say, and so I don't want to steal all that, but I think that plays a factor in. He will probably play somewhere. If the Jets say no, and then we're all going to be like, where? Who needs a quarterback that would throw in on Aaron Rodgers and,
for a season? Yeah. I mean, Vegas would. They got nothing going out there. They could pitch him, hey, you can come play here for a season or a half season, whatever you want. Get those 6 touchdowns. I don't think he's finished yet. I'm not convinced he's going to play for the Jets, though. The talk around the Green Bay area is the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson is too far beyond saving.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can't really get along with your owner and they dictate realistically everything that happens within the organization, or at least their 17-year-old grandson or their Madden rating does, it's pretty hard to believe that he'll be there. I mean, he could stay in New York, but he would play for the Giants. He would have to sell his estate in New Jersey.
Right, he just bought himself a house, right?
Yeah, what was it, like an $18 million mega mansion in New Jersey?
Yeah, I love how he said, I just got a home. The word home that he uses and the word home that I used a little bit different, but he got one.
His home is still for sale here in the Green Bay area for like $15 million, and no one's biting on it yet. Hard to believe any of those construction workers are going to be going for that house.
It's
a nice place. It's a nice place. I drove by it once. It's a big place. It's a little bit cheaper than New York. You can have more square footage in that house.
Yeah.
But like New York would still be an option in my mind. Just one season with the Giants or one season with the Raiders. I'm not sure if Aaron's going to want to have part ownership or, reporting up to part owner Tom Brady in Vegas. Because realistically, I think Tom's going to have a big say in who's calling the plays down there on that field and who's snapping the ball. They're going to look at him a lot for that. So he plays somewhere. He lived his entire career in Brett Favre's shadow. And so he's not going to stop slightly less than Brett. He's got way too much of a chip on his shoulder just to do that.
Time is a flat circle, guys, and he's going to be a Minnesota Viking next year. Somehow, some way, it's going to. JJ McCarthy's rehab will hit a bump or something in the offseason, and they're going to want to bring in somebody as a precaution. Sam Darnold's going to be too expensive for them for what he can do, and Kwesi is going to phone up.
I got it. I got
the
general
manager.
I got how he gets to Minnesota. It's going to be JJ for Aaron. JJ's getting traded to New York. They're rocking with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold gets injured in the first 3 or 4 games of the season.
We're trading for Aaron Rodgers so that he can be a backup to Sam Darnold.
Yep. And Sam Darnold gets injured, or Aaron, kicks him in the back of the leg while they're lifting weights or something. Aaron gets out there just for like 5 games in the season, throws, let's say, just 3 touchdowns a game, gets 15 touchdowns, surpasses Brett. And then Sam
at Lambeau Field.
Back in. Whoa! Let's not go too far.
Lambeau Field, and then retires.
Yeah, let's not go too far here. But there you go, because part of the trade is going to be New York has to keep all of his cap.
Oh yeah, that's
so
true.
It's nothing against Minnesota's cap, and they're going to market it as a competition, right? 2 former New York Jets competing for the starting spot in Minnesota.
I think if that happened, Aaron Rodgers would just say, "I'm done playing football." If he had to compete against Sam Darnold,
but with Aaron Rodgers, you're going to get Devontae Adams too.
That's
true. They're going to come.
Justin Jefferson, yeah, it'll be good.
And Jordan Addison, that's going to be the best receiver room in the NFL. That's going to be a quarterback stream. If you don't win the Super Bowl with that, I'm convinced you're just cursed.
I've been convinced of that for a while.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on into our first segment, and Brandon is going to take us through this one. Brandon, what do we got?
Well, since the inception of this podcast in, was it 2020, Matthew? This is year number 5. At
least. Yes, It is year number 5.
Yeah, so Matthew and I, and we've gone through this with Blake, we've gone through it with Tristan, we've gone through it with Josh Haupt, everyone, Brandon Harris that's been on this podcast. We've all been in agreement that every year the selection of the Pro Bowl means absolutely nothing, and it just dwindles and dwindles and dwindles over time. And it doesn't do anything for the player. It's a fan pick. So some coaches have a little bit of influence in there. But the real thing that we want to look at is who the players think are the best players at their position. And it's more of an indicator, I think, because Matthew, I don't know about you or Josh, but I'm not standing on that field trying to tackle Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry in the open field. And I wouldn't want to be on that field doing either of those things.
Right.
And so the players come out and they say, we think this is the best person at this position. And they make an offense, they make a defense, and they make a special team squad. And so I want to go through all 3 of those. Do you have any order you'd like to go? Offense, defense, special teams? You want to start with special teams?
Let's go. Yeah, sure. What is this called now? The NFLPA?
The first team All-Pro.
Okay.
And there's also, not to be confused with the Associated Press All-Pro, which will come out at the end of the season.
Yeah, and the Associated Press will have first and second team. So you'll have your backups for those positions. This is just the first team. So these are the best players at these positions in there right now, according to the players. So let's start with the special teams. All right. So on special teams, here are the positions we have. We have kicker, we have punter, we have the punt returner, we have the kick returner, we have the core teamer. We have 2 core teamers, which are people that can play in any of the positions other than returning or kicking, and we have the long snapper. So we have our kicker, the guy kicking all of our field goals, the guy doing all of our point after attempts. We have Pittsburgh Steelers, Chris Boswell.
Okay.
Who's good?
All right.
Yeah.
Not bad. Not bad. Brandon McManus, I think, would have been an honorable second as the most accurate kicker this season. Just going to throw that out there. Green Bay Packer.
Did he miss 5 games, or because it says if you missed 5 games before week fit? How long was he on the? Because he came after the.
He came in during week 6.
Okay. All right. So he wouldn't have been eligible.
Yeah. So he wasn't eligible. He had 94% of his all kicks were in, highest in the NFL. We have our punter is Logan Cook out of Jacksonville. Our punt returner, we have Marvin Mims Jr. from the Denver Broncos. Our kick returner, we have Kavonte Turbin out of Dallas. Our 2 core teamers, we have Brendan Schooler from New England and Miles Killebrew from Pittsburgh. And then our long snapper is Ross Matich out of Jacksonville. Lots of AFC representation.
So you got two from Jacksonville there. Yeah.
2 from Jacksonville and 2 from Pittsburgh.
Wow, something going right in Jacksonville at least.
Yeah, special teams.
Yeah, that's
the heart of all football.
Yeah, I was going to say most of those names you read, I am unfamiliar with because I don't pay attention to other teams' special teams, kickers and punters. The kicker. Whenever they go for the extra point, they talk about them, but nobody talks about the long snapper unless something goes wrong. These sound fine to me.
Yeah, Matthew, I guarantee you're going to recommend or recognize more of the defensive names. So let's go ahead and get them there.
Let's do that.
We have 2 interior defensive linemen. We have Chris Jones out of Kansas City. No surprise there. He's been a beast all season. He's had a very good career up until this point as well. And we have Philadelphia Eagle Jalen Carter. Same comments there. He's just been a force to reckon with on the inside of the defensive line. We have 2 edge rushers. We have Trey Hendrickson out of Cincinnati and Myles Garrett out of Cleveland, both very deserving of those roles. We have 1 nose tackle. We have Dexter Lawrence from the New York Giants. Not a surprise there. 2 off-ball linebackers. We have Roquan Smith with the Baltimore Ravens and Fred Warner with the San Francisco 49ers. We have 1 singular strong safety. We have Xavier McKinney from the Green Bay Packers. Shout out to my guy X. We have 1 strong safety, Kyle Hamilton from the Baltimore Ravens. And 2 cornerbacks. We have Pat Surtain out of Denver and Derek Singletary Jr. out of Houston. I think if I was an offense playing this defense, I'd be pretty scared. That's a star-studded cast right there.
Yeah, I have no problems with any of those guys. Those guys all look good. I mean, there are a lot of really good cornerbacks, but I think Surtain was the best out of them, and Derek Stingley also had a really good year.
Yeah, and I know Lions fans were disappointed in this that Kirby Joseph was not on this list either. He also had a great season playing safety for Detroit. All right. The first team offense. We have at quarterback, the best quarterback in the NFL, according to the players, is not Josh Allen, who is, in most people's eyes, most fans' eyes, the MVP favorite right now. But another MVP favorite is also Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens. Very fitting there. I'm sure the race between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson was pretty tight. I don't think Lamar took this by miles. Number 1 tight end in the NFL, we have rookie Brock Bowers from the Las Vegas Raiders. Really hard to find rookies on this list. It does not happen very often. Brock and who's the rookie out of New York, the receiver, Malik Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were going back and forth all season on like greatest rookie reception. And Brock finished the season holding that record, surpassing Malik. But they went back and forth like these past 3 weeks on.
And
It's going to be Malik. It's going to be
I think
Brock.
it goes to show you that tight end is not, there's been some great tight ends through history. There's not like a ton of them right now. Travis Kelce was not great this year. In years past, I think he would have maybe gotten into this place. Maybe he did. But Brock Bowers kind of brought that back. He came back and was a special player. I remember when everybody thought the Colts were going to draft him. They didn't, but yeah.
Brock Bowers was on my fantasy team, and I'll just tell you as his fantasy owner, he was in there every week except for his bye week. He helped me win a lot of games. We have two receivers. I don't think there's any surprise here. A pair of LSU favorites. We have Jamar Chase, who we talked about earlier. He got the triple crown for receivers this season, and lining up on the other side of him is Justin Jefferson. Of course, they both played in college. They won the national championship with LSU with Joe Burrow at quarterback. So there's some special stuff going on there. We have one running back, and there should not be any surprise that it is Saquon Barkley with the dominance of the season he just had. And I understand the running backs that hit free agency this offseason with Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, and they all had really good seasons for their organization. Saquon just went out there and put on something really special.
Now, did I hear this wrong, that Jahmyr Gibbs had the most touchdowns of anyone in the NFL this season?
Of 28? Anyone or any running back?
He had 28, so it probably would have been, I don't know. I thought they said anyone, but maybe it is just running back.
Out of any skill player, for sure.
Let's see. Jahmyr Gibbs finished with 20 receiving rushing touchdowns. And it's bold here on Pro Football Reference. So that would be the most. 16 on the ground and then 4 receiving.
I feel like is that right? Okay. I thought when I was watching that game, Detroit, they even at the end, they're like, "Do you realize you have more touchdowns than anyone in the NFL?" and I thought they said 28. But maybe
I think that would be second all time if he had that many. But he still had 20 is phenomenal, and he had 9 in the last 4 or 5 games of the season, which is when David Montgomery went out, and he earned his stripes.
Yeah. So how many did Saquon have?
Let's see. I know he went over the 2,000-yard rushing mark, and he finished with, drum roll, 15 total touchdowns. He had 2 receiving touchdowns, 13 rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
Which ties his career high. But
and I'm not sure how many of those.
I think in terms of total yards,
I'm not sure how many of the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdowns also occurred in kind of garbage time in the NFL. Detroit was just on a roll to just completely embarrass every team they played. Yeah. So just handing the ball. I think Detroit had the most 40-plus point games in the NFL. Maybe it was this season or in this decade. But I mean, Detroit was out like ripping people's throats out intentionally.
Yeah.
So Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery combined for 28 rushing touchdowns. Might be the stat.
Maybe that's
Jahmyr
what
Gibbs
I heard.
Had 16 and David Montgomery had 12.
And I probably heard that he set a Lions record instead of a record. So still good. And Saquon Barkley, not a surprise.
Yeah. And a Lions record is still really impressive, given that that's where Barry Sanders had played.
Yeah.
For a running back. And I remember when Jahmyr Gibbs got drafted there, he's like, "Man, I've been watching Barry since day one. He's been my inspiration this whole time." And I think his first game is when they revealed the statue to go in front of Ford Field for Barry. So he was at the game. Jahmyr Gibbs' first NFL start. All right, our fullbacks. I know this is like the deepest roster spot in every NFL team. I'll take two of them.
The fullbacks. Yeah, got a lot of them.
Probably the only one that I actually know their name because Green Bay doesn't use a fullback. We just bring a tight end to do that work. We use Tucker Kraft. Kyle Juszczyk. I can't really name another fullback in the NFL, but Kyle Juszczyk is a good one.
Yeah. Yep. He's very I know Patrick Ricard in Baltimore and then CJ Ham in Minnesota, but I don't know anyone else besides that.
Yeah. And Kyle Juszczyk just does it.
he's the best out of all of them. Yep.
Yep. And so no surprise there. We got our best left tackle in the NFL. We got Tristan Wirfs out of Tampa Bay. No surprise there. Our top left guard, we have Joe Thuney out of Kansas City. Our best right tackle, we got Penei Sewell out of Detroit. Also no surprise there. He had a great season. Our best right guard, we have Chris Lindstrom from Atlanta. And our best center, we have Creed Humphrey out of Kansas City. So Kansas City's got 2 of the 5 top offensive linemen this season, according to players. That bodes well for your organization.
Mm-hmm.
But, I agree with pretty much. Yeah, I agree with everything on offense, and then pretty much everything on defense. I think you could sub out maybe a corner for Derek Stingley, but I think the players got it right.
Got it pretty good. Yeah.
And who am I to argue with them? So,
and again, yeah, when you're playing against the people week in and week out, you have a feel for what their level of talent really is.
Something I wish they would do is they would release who was the alternate and the alternate, like how close these races were. Because I'm sure the players, while they don't look at wins as the same way that the fans do, like playing Joe Burrow, they're going to be like, yeah, this dude is he's a tough nut to crack. Like, I don't want to play Joe Burrow, even though Cincinnati missed the playoffs and Joe Burrow still had a stellar season, right? I'm sure Joe Burrow had quite a number of votes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And I'd also like a list of like who they want to play, who they think they can take advantage of the most. Is a Drew Lock in there? Is what are we seeing?
True.
Whatever the opposite of all pro is, that'd be interesting.
Least pro.
Oh man.
So I think that would be fun for obvious reasons. I do not think they are going to release that list.
Probably.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. So, but that's what we got for how the players view themselves and their colleagues.
And that brings us to, let's look at the playoff seeding has happened. Let's run through what the playoff seeding is, and then start to look at some of these games coming up this weekend. Josh, why don't you take us through, just as we're looking at the playoff seedings, let's look at all of them and say, we thought this is where they would end up, or we didn't think this is where they would end up, and then we'll go into those games.
Yeah, let's start in the AFC, and to nobody's surprise, the Kansas City Chiefs get the number 1 spot, and I mean, probably the worst 15-2 team of all time. I don't know if but it's a 15-2 team, and they had that spot locked up for quite a few weeks towards the end of the season, so much so that they didn't even need to play any of their starters against Denver, and basically just let the Broncos waltz into the playoffs in a 38-0 loss. Yeah. The Buffalo Bills are the number 2 seed. They win the AFC East. I believe they had the AFC East locked up since like week 11 or week 12. Yeah. So that has been long been the case. The Miami Dolphins, if they would have won and Denver would have lost, they would have made the playoffs, but that did not happen. The exact opposite of that happened, in fact. So that is all from the AFC East. The AFC North winner, kind of, I mean, not a surprise. I think this is probably who we all thought it would be going into the season, but maybe based on 4 weeks ago would have been a little bit of a surprise, seeing that the Steelers had the 2-game lead. The Steelers lose their last 4 games and fall from 10-3 to 10-7. The Ravens take full advantage, beating the Steelers in one of those games. They go 12-5, and they are oppositely on a 4-game winning streak. So the Ravens, they get the 3 seed. And we'll talk about where the Steelers seed here is in just a second. And then the other division winner, AFC South, Houston Texans, they've had that locked up for a couple of weeks. They go 10-7, kind of a rocky season for them, and kind of, I think, a little bit worse than we all thought that they of a season that we thought they were going to have. Just considering Mixon and Stephon Diggs being added to the mix. They have 2 receivers go down in Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs, but they finished with the 4 seed. 5 seed is the wild card team, the Los Angeles Chargers. 6 seed is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and 7 seed is the Bo Nix-led Denver Broncos. So they get that last playoff spot by beating the Kansas City Chiefs. It got dicey. They needed to win one of their final 3 weeks and have 3 different teams lose at least once. The Bengals didn't lose any of their games in those last 3 weeks. The Broncos lost the first 2, but they got the win that they needed to clinch in the final week of the season against the Kansas City Chiefs. That is the AFC seeding. NFC number 1 seed was won on Sunday Night Football, the Detroit Lions of the NFC North, when they beat the Vikings. So they'll have the bye. And the number 2 seed, the 14-3 Philadelphia Eagles, great season by them. They had that long winning streak in the middle of the season that was interrupted by the Washington Commanders, who also made the playoffs. And we'll talk about their seed in a second. Number 3 seed is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 10-7. They surpassed the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh, and right there, let's just stop for a second. How could we not, in our news section, mention that
Mike Evans
tied.
Yeah, 11 straight season of 1,000 yards receiving.
Yeah, with Jerry Rice.
Yeah. What company to have.
And the way, the very last play, everybody knows that's what they're going for, and he still gets it and runs 1 yard more than he needs.
and the playoffs were on the line in that moment, and they had the lead. They had the ball, and the other team, the defense, the Saints, didn't have any timeouts. Imagine if that gets tipped up into the air, intercepted, brought back for 6. The Falcons ended up losing, but the Falcons win their game against the Panthers, and it's kind of a gutsy move there.
Yeah,
even though that's a low percentage thing that will happen, but.
And what that does there is cements Baker Mayfield in that locker room, because that was bound to be his call. I'm going to get the ball to you, so he got $8 million bonus just for breaking that, or the 1,000 yards for the 11th time. It was a huge payday for Mike, and the more importantly, the title, the recognition, and now he goes in the next year with the possibility of becoming the top. Yeah. That's crazy.
And I got to point this out for Josh Haupt's sake, because I know he won't listen to this episode. But if he did, he would be very disappointed if we didn't pull this out. Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, Josh's favorite receiver in the NFL right now, only has 6 more years to tie that record as well.
Only 6. He's right there.
But he's got 1,000 yards in each of the last 5 seasons. And so Josh is saying, hey, he's going to be there. And so
might be, never know.
Yeah. I'm telling Josh right now here live on air to put his money in the donation pot, and we will donate that money for you.
So yeah, Mike Evans, congratulations on that. And Baker Mayfield, way to take care of your players. Even like Josh was saying here, kind of a risky, gutsy move to make, even though you were winning right there. So yeah, all good. Buccaneers win. They're in. I'll let you get back to your seating now.
Number 4 seed Rams from the NFC West. They win. They have to go deep into the tiebreakers against the Seahawks. It was a strength of victory tiebreaker that put them above Seattle. And then wild card teams are number 5 is the Vikings at 14-3, the first ever wild card team with 14 wins.
Yeah.
The Washington Commanders. They end the season on a 5-game winning streak. They're 12-5. They're the number 6 seed, and the number 7 seed is the Green Bay Packers at 11-6.
And how did they end the season?
With a loss to the Chicago Bears for the first time
to who?
Since 2018. The Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears.
That was just rubbing it in, wasn't it?
Thomas Brown's only win as interim head coach was against the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, and our backups. Yes.
That's true. That's true. Jordan Love kind of he got a little bit hurt, and they kind of took him out. I think more precautionary than anything. So
Yeah,
Malik
within the
Willis
first quarter.
was in the game
Malik
for
Willis was
most of that
there.
one. But
Yeah, and Josh Jacobs was out after the first quarter, and yeah.
Yeah, at that point, they know we're seated at number 7. Let's just relax.
Yeah.
So that means this weekend we have 6 wild card games, and we start with Saturday as the Los Angeles Chargers head into Houston for the first game of this year's playoffs. It's going to be a matchup between Justin Herbert and CJ Stroud. What do you guys think about this game?
I'm seeing ESPN put on the betting line right now. The Chargers are favored by 3 points right now.
I was just going to say the tail of the end of the season, well, middle to end of the season, was the Chargers got better than we expected. And Houston did worse than we expected. And so that's always where you want to be going into playoffs. And I could see the Chargers knocking off Houston, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Harbaugh's looking to come make a statement in his first season back to the NFL.
Yeah. I have the Chargers winning this game. The strength of the Texans defense are those 2 edge rushers in Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. And the strength of the Chargers offense are those 2 outside tackles, Rashawn Slater and the rookie Joe Alt. And their offensive line has been together the most of any offensive line this season. So they've grown. The interior was mucky for like the first 2/3 of the season, but as of late, they have not given up a ton of pressures. And I think Justin Herbert's going to have a ton of time, even though he doesn't have a ton of weapons. I think that will be enough to slow down or to score on Houston. And then we've seen what Houston's offense has done against good pass rushers, which the Chargers had. They had the number 1 ranked scoring defense through most of the season. So I like the Chargers to win that one.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have an AFC North showdown on Saturday night. That is the Pittsburgh Steelers visiting the Baltimore Ravens. 3rd time that these 2 teams have played each other. They're 1-1 this season against one another. So the rubber match comes in the AFC wildcard game. What do you guys think about that one?
I think Baltimore is going to come in and manhandle Pittsburgh. I really do. I know Pittsburgh did a lot. Mike Tomlin, I'm never going to put him down for what he can do as a coach, but he hasn't accomplished much in the postseason post Big Ben era, which is weird to think about because I haven't said that name in 5 years.
Yeah,
and he's able to assemble pieces and get a manageable team, but now you're in the playoffs. Baltimore is just a star-studded cast right now. And so I think Baltimore handles this game in Baltimore pretty well. And they're 9.5-point favorites right now. I think that's our largest spread we have.
I think if you were Baltimore, there are other teams you would rather see because as divisional rivals, Pittsburgh always plays Baltimore tougher than they should. And you see that a lot with divisional games. That's what always happens. Like you get the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Colts, and they're the worst team in the league, but they know how to play divisional games. I think the same thing here, but I do think Baltimore wins this one. But I think it's a tough game. I think this one's going to be, if Russell Wilson's throwing the right rainbows, right? Yeah. If he's not, I think Baltimore easily takes it. But I think Baltimore takes it either way. But I think this is a tougher game for them than they would have loved probably to get like Denver. You know, who wouldn't?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you got over or under 9.5-point favorites, Matthew?
Well, I'm not going to go over. So I guess I would
more like a 1-point game.
Well, I don't think it'll be 1 point. I think it'll
1 score. Sorry, 1 score
I think that could be more accurate. Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Baltimore as well. I think multiple times this season I've said that the Steelers would be Super Bowl contenders if Russell Wilson played the way that he continued to play the way that he did early in the season. That continued through their 13th game of the season, and then during this losing streak, it has all gone away. The best thing that he did was throw accurate passes to George Pickens, who would just go up in tight coverage and catch them. They lost George Pickens for a little bit due to injury, and then the last couple of times he's been out there, that chemistry has just completely vanished. So I now think it doesn't matter who the Steelers have out there at quarterback between Wilson and Justin Fields. I feel like they're the same team they were during the first 5-week stretch with Justin Fields, and that was a good defense, crummy offense, and Baltimore's defense has gotten better as the season has progressed as well. So I will choose Baltimore, and I would actually probably I'm going to go over that 9.5. I think they win by 10 or more.
Okay.
Next game we have up, final one in the AFC. That one takes place Sunday at noon Central Time. And that is the Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. So that's the 2 versus 7. Are we going to get the Bills going on to another divisional round or an upset from the Broncos?
With everything in me, I believe Buffalo's going to crush Denver. I think Buffalo should crush Denver. I don't think Denver is as good as even the record they have that got them in. I think there was just some really badly played games during the regular season that they got a win in that put them in a position, even all the way up to that last game where it was all backups and they just go in and win. So their record looks like, they belong. I don't think they belong. And I think Buffalo should trounce them. Now, what would be heartbreaking to me is if somehow it was one of those Sundays and Buffalo somehow lost to a team that was far inferior. But I also remember that Sean Payton said before the season started that he thought Bo Nix was the best quarterback in the draft, and everybody was going to be surprised, and he loved him. Now, I don't think he's played like the best quarterback in the draft, but he's definitely played better than I thought he was going to.
Better than Caleb Williams, that's for sure.
I thought he was going to just do very little, be kind of wild with the ball, a lot of, but here they are. So Buffalo is my choice. And unless something freaky happens in the universe, I think it's going to be by a good margin.
You think, so right now it's 8.5 points. You think well over that 8.5?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to say something that will be blasphemous to everything else that I've said about the Denver Broncos this season.
Is this your upset of the week?
It might be. I have a couple of upsets.
Oh my.
I'm still not. So the Bills struggle against the quick passing game. They can cover down the field with Brentford and Rasul Douglas. They struggle defensively against teams that are in the playoffs. Their defense was one of the worst in games against teams in games they played this season against teams that are now in the playoffs. The Broncos love the short game. They will happily take that if the deep stuff is covered up. And the Broncos also have a good cornerback where they blitz a lot. And while Buffalo's offensive line is good, that could force Josh Allen to make some mistakes. When he's needed his safety valve, that's kind of been Khalil Shakir or James Cook underneath. Shakir is going to go up against Jaquan McMillan a lot for Denver, who has been phenomenal in the slot. And then Riley Moss, he did get burned a lot by T. Higgins, but other than that one game, which he was coming back from injury, has been good on the outside. And then Pat Surtain, we've already talked about. He's essentially the best cornerback in the league. And I still don't believe in Bo Nix. I heard it earlier this week. I forgot where, but he's played amazing and has played to be league average. He has played like incredible up to his standard to be a league average quarterback. And I agree with that. And I think, though, that it's a Sean Payton game plan that is going to get the Broncos past the Buffalo Bills. I don't want to say it because I want the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. I don't want Bo Nix to move on and for the propaganda of Bo Nix to be continued to be pushed for an extra week. But I think that has a chance of happening this weekend.
Bold.
Yeah, I was going to mention on Bo Nix. Every time I watch him play, I'm not more inspired than his play than I am of Brock Purdy's play. Like, to me, they play almost the exact same quarterback game. Brock Purdy and Bo Nix are the same quarterback to me. You could swap either one of them in or out, and it's going to be the same result.
Kind of like a Drew Lock, Daniel Jones situation.
Well, it's different. I know they're different people, Matthew.
Okay, that's different.
But their physical play as quarterback is take the underneath and then take the over. Take the underneath and then take the over. So their goal is to get the defense to play the short game and then they hit you with the over when appropriate. And that also goes along with what both of their head coaches do, Kyle Shanahan and Sean Payton. And we saw Drew Brees make an entire career out of this. He's slant, 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 wide open seam, slant, 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 wide open seam. And Bo Nix is playing the same game. Brock Purdy's playing the same game. It's really just going to be an entire game of, can they time those open things properly? Like Josh mentioned, the deep defensive secondary of Buffalo is fantastic, and it's hard to get past them. And they're like that because they're built to stop the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, Buffalo has shaped their entire defense off of stopping Patrick Mahomes, and not Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill, right? Because he was with that team, and stopping Travis Kelce and stopping all of these star-studded players that are, their best game is down the field. And so if you just focus on the Peyton Manning strategy of, let's just let's never hit third down, just get 5 yards of play and just get first downs, I think that's the solution to keeping this game really close. I don't know if it's going to be a runaway with it, but I think Buffalo is going to have a similar game plan going into this. This is going to be short. Let's hit the wide open thing. Oh, let's let Josh Allen run it for 20 yards while everyone's running downfield. They're just going to have a little bit more versatility on the Buffalo offense that I don't think Denver's going to be able to fully keep up with.
I hope you guys are right. I'm very
We do too.
Next up, we move over to the NFC. It's kind of the games are scheduled so that all 3 AFC games are out of the way first, and then it's the 3 NFC games at 3:30 Central Time. The Green Bay Packers visit the Philadelphia Eagles. This was the first game of, well, I guess the second total game of the season after the Thursday night season opener, but it was the first game for both the Packers and the Eagles this year. They played that one, however, in Brazil, where the field conditions were not great.
Very sick.
I don't know how much better they're going to be wintertime at Lincoln Financial Field, but I would assume still better than in Sao Paulo. Brandon, you are the Packers guy here. So how do you think Green Bay is going to perform?
Yeah, it depends. If many of our players come out and perform the same way they have the past couple of weeks, we're going to get blown out of the freaking water. And it's not going to be particularly close. There's been in the past, I'm going to say 4 weeks. I mean, we won a few of those games. Take out the game against New Orleans, because that was a really solid game from Green Bay. But the rest of our last 4 weeks, there was just poor execution on both sides of the ball everywhere. And it drove me crazy as a fan watching the game, or I was at the game for New Orleans and I was excited for that. We couldn't think about basic football concepts in times of the game where we needed it. And I know we talked about Green Bay lost to Chicago for the first time since 2018, the NFL's largest rivalry, which is not a great feeling as a Packers fan, because like realistically, I look forward to those games a little bit more. Mostly because I grew up in Illinois. My entire family is Bears fans. I've been going on almost 6 years now of, hey, where are you? Where are you? I'm right here. And I couldn't do that this week. But like even the last play of the game, they're 10 yards from field goal range, and you play super prevent defense to stop them from getting a touchdown where they don't have enough time to throw the ball down the field and then do another play. Just some really poor play calling that happened. I don't know if Matt LaFleur took the blame for it. I don't know if it was Jeff Hafley that made the call. Matt made the call on behalf of Jeff. I don't know what happened there, but there was a lot of communication issues. And if those continue into this week, I think it's going to be a solid 35-0, and Green Bay's just going out of the playoffs, and they deserve if they perform that same way. That being said, if they get everything together, I think it's going to be a much closer game. I think it's going to be similar to week 1. I like the scoring line right now that Philadelphia is favorited by 4.5 points. That's still within one score. I think Green Bay can cover a one-score game, provided the game plan and the play calling and the execution of that play calling is positive. Now, I don't know about Jalen Hurts yet. Is he playing or is he not? Because he's in concussion protocol at the moment. If he's not playing, then
both him and Jordan Love were limited in practice yesterday.
Okay.
I don't have today's practice report, but we could get a 2022 draft class matchup between Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis.
There you go. And I'll take Malik Willis any day over Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
Especially with Kenny Pickett's last pass where he went to go throw the ball and the ball weighed him down so much like Mjolnir's hammer. He ended up on the ground with the ball and the ball never left his hand. It was great. But I hope that doesn't happen. I want to see both of these teams at their best. Now, a quiet strength that Green Bay's had the second half of the season is stopping the run game. And I know Saquon is first team All-Pro, voted on by the players. I don't want to play Saquon either, but I do feel confident that we can at least contain him to a manageable level to not let him just run all over us the way that historically we've let running backs run all over us in the defense or in the playoffs. So I'm going into this game with an open mind and a closed mind at the same time. It's a real quantum computing issue. But I could see it going either way, and it's all going to come down to Green Bay's execution. If they come out and do what they're supposed to, I feel good about us covering a 4.5 point spread. If they come out and do absolutely nothing and drop every ball that's perfectly thrown to them, and they don't read the defense, and the defense just lets Saquon get 100 yards on every carry, we're just not going to win. It's not going to be good enough. And then we don't deserve to win at that point either.
I'm going to jump in and say I think last year Green Bay was the young team that came in, took everything by storm, went further than everybody expected, and we thought maybe they would build on that this year. I think this year they lose this first game. I think the Eagles are a tough team, and I think they're in the right mentality. Now, it probably does matter if Jalen Hurts is not in there. So there's always that caveat. But if he's in there, I think the Eagles find a way with the running game they have and the receivers they have to take advantage in some aspect of this game. And unfortunately, I think this might be the end of the Green Bay season this year. And so, I still expect they're going to grow. They have great coaching and players, and I don't think they're stopped by any means. But right now, Philadelphia is looking really strong, and I expect they're going to win this week. And I don't know that it's going to be a blowout, but I think they do.
Yeah, Green Bay is the second youngest playoff team in the history of the NFL. To come in just behind last year's Green Bay playoff team. That was the first. And so it's literally a team 1 year removed from it.
I think this is going to be the best game in terms of just pure football of the week. I think it's probably going to be the most tightly contested game of the weekend. I mean, last time these two teams matched up, it was a close game. It came down to the final minute or final play where Jordan Love got injured the play before, so they needed to bring Malik Willis in to throw the Hail Mary, and Malik Willis, who had just gotten there earlier that week or earlier the last week. However, the Eagles do have a new nickel corner. Jaden Reed kind of tore up the nickel corner of Vontae Maddox when they played in the opening week of the season. Cooper DeJean has filled in since Philadelphia's bye, and he has been fantastic. The corners for Philadelphia have been great with DeJean and then the other rookie, Kenyon Mitchell. Darius Slay is a little bit step behind where he used to be, but I do think that Green Bay has a way, even without, Jair Alexander for the rest of this season, I do think Green Bay has a way to combat those wide receivers, and that's Jeff Hafley's blitzes. He has a blitz package that isn't like Brian Flores' blitz package is kind of just like brute strength, a bunch of rushers. Jeff Hafley's can use brute strength, but it's also like, okay, we'll stunt here, or we'll overload to one side so they have to slide the offensive line over, and then we'll bring in a couple of linebackers up the middle in that gap where they had slid away from. So I think they can get pressure on Jalen Hurts. And because I think this is a coin toss game, I'm just going to go with what I want to happen. And what I want to happen is if the Vikings win, for them not to have to play Detroit or Philadelphia in the next round of the playoffs. If Philadelphia wins, they would have to play one of those two teams. If Green Bay wins, they would have to play neither of those teams in the next round. So I'm going to go Green Bay Packers win this game 30-27.
I'd take
Wow.
it. I would be pleased.
You have to remember, he also picked the Colts to win their division.
I'm just trying to people please on this podcast. Right?
Hey, it's Midwest nice. It's Midwest nice, man.
Yeah,
That's right.
So we have the Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is the 12-5 Commanders against the 10-7 Buccaneers. That's Josh Hopp's team, the Commanders, and in the interest of people pleasing again, and also just what I think is going to happen, I am picking the Washington Commanders in this game because I think, I know it's kind of cliche at this point, but Mike Evans just has not, for whatever reason, played well against Marshawn Lattimore. So just put Marshawn Lattimore up against Mike Evans, and you've taken away a significant part of what Baker Mayfield can do through the air. And I don't particularly like Tampa Bay's defense. I think Washington will be able to run all over them. The Bucs are -3, but if the Bucs are even like +7, I would say the Washington would cover a 7-point spread, would win by at least 7 and win by a couple of possessions. I think this one isn't going to be particularly close, and I think the Commanders win it.
Yeah, I just want to bring up what Josh texted us, Josh Haupt, on this game, and I'm going to read this verbatim. Y'all better pick the commies to win this week on the podcast, or I will unsubscribe, leave the group chat, and most importantly, exploit Brandon. Commies, I'm too scared of you, Josh. Commies are going to win. He put another thing in the chat I'm just going to bring up. Commanders are 10-0 this season when allowing 24 or fewer points, and the Buccaneers are 9-1 when allowing 23 or fewer points. Josh says officially, yeah, we ain't allowing 24 or fewer. Defense sucks, man. This game hinges on how JD performs and what kind of offense Cliff Kingsbury calls. So Josh is not super optimistic at the moment. I do like Jaden Daniels in the offense. We also get a historic receiver cornerback matchup this week of Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans. Those two have been brawling ever since they entered the NFL, and it's been such a fun matchup. And we're gonna get to see that this weekend.
Yeah, and going along with that, I looked at these two teams, and the first word that comes to mind is plucky quarterback, because the whole thing with Baker Mayfield is sometimes I feel like, okay, this team is not as good as the team they're going against, and somehow he just gets in there and there's this sense of who he is that just takes over, and he kind of wills his team to a win. Well, then Jaden Daniels comes along, and I saw at least 2 or 3 games this season where it looked like they were not going to make it, and somehow he put the team on his back in the last couple minutes and willed them to a win. And sometimes, even when it was that super long, crazy Hail Mary that bounced around and got in the, it's just like, okay, these two quarterbacks are the ones that are going to make the decision here. And just out of pure joy for Josh Haupt, I'm also picking Washington. And the joy of the story of Jaden Daniels, who I think is going to end up winning, the Offensive Rookie of the Year easily. This would be like a great, he won his first playoff game and, add to his legend that will surely grow through the years. I'm picking Washington.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that Josh has also hired people to hold us at gunpoint as we made these picks.
Okay, they're stepping away, but I'm going
to go now. Final game of the season is, or not of the season. Final game of this weekend's slate games is Minnesota at Los Angeles, with the caveat that this game could be played potentially right here in Glendale, Arizona. And if so, I am going to try to get to that game. The Wildfires, the NFL released a statement yesterday that said right now that we're still planning on playing at SoFi Stadium, but if the Wildfires render it that we cannot, the game will be played at State Farm Stadium in Glendale. So keep an eye on kind of where that game is going to be happening. The Vikings and the Rams matched up once this season. It was a 30-20 Los Angeles Rams win. It was a Thursday night football game, which I kind of I typically just, whenever I throw out Thursday nights as kind of like the outliers of games. And I mean, that's kind of what it was. The Los Angeles Rams, whose offensive line had not done anything against really anyone all season, held the Minnesota Vikings, who have one of the best QB pass rushes in the league this year, best pressure percentage. They held them to an 11.8% pressure percentage in that game, which was the lowest by a Vikings team since at least 2018, when they first, started tracking these with the more advanced metrics. So even the really bad Vikings defenses of 2020 and 2021 were getting more pressure than the Vikings got in that game against a pretty not great, not terrible, but still below average Rams offensive line. And I think the main reason for that was the short rest after playing the Detroit Lions the week prior. They are still coming off a game where they had played the Detroit Lions a week prior, but they've had more than 3 days to wait. They don't have surprise. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are both back in action. They know they're going to be back there more than 3 hours before the game. Brian Flores said that's when they found out last time, and they kind of had to scramble a little bit. So I think the Vikings defense is going to be more prepared. I don't think they're worn down as much in terms of rushing the passer. And I think they're able to get to Matt Stafford, who after that Buffalo game where they put up 48 points or whatever, they have put up that many points total over their last 3 or 4 games with Matthew Stafford leading the squad. And most of those points came in that last game against Seattle when Jimmy Garoppolo was leading the team. So I do like the Vikings to win this game and move on. And in how I have it lining up, they would host the Washington Commanders, and we would have a Josh off next week.
A Josh off.
That would be fun. I'll go next on this one, Matthew. This is, according to the betting lines, the closest game. It's Vikings are favored by one point. Very, very close. And Matthew Stafford has been on a roll this last quarter of the season, kind of when you need your team to heat up, right, in December and January and first week of February. I think it's going to be an all-out brawl. It's going to be one of the more exciting games, in my opinion. Sean McVay is not going to go down without a fight. And I think it's going to be pretty fun. I do want to see what would happen if the conference championship was hosted by the Rams and by the Chargers at the same time, having AFC and NFC 24 hours apart in LA or Glendale, pending the wildfires in a few weeks, would be very exciting. And it's something we've never seen. And I know
there's a lot of traffic. A lot of traffic. All those teams, fans converging.
There already is a lot of traffic. I don't know if it's going to add any. I think that would be exciting. I would like to see the Rams win this one just for that. I think the Vikings have worked too hard this season to let that happen, though. So it's going to be a tight race. I think it's going to come down to whoever has the last possession of the ball and what they can do with it.
I am going to say, okay, first of all, can you pick the Vikings and take the under? If they've only got a 1 point. I'm not doing that. I just wondered real quick.
If it's one,
so I think by all means the Vikings should win this game. But something in me just keeps saying, man, the way they played this last week, if the Rams were watching what Detroit did on defense and how it rattled Sam Darnold, and got his throw off. And if they try to mimic that at all, and I don't know if their defense is capable of doing that, but then again, I didn't think Detroit had that kind of defense before this last week. If they do that and Matthew Stafford goes out and is clicking with his receivers, I very much think this is going to be my upset of the week. Not because I want it to be. If I had my desire, I would want Minnesota to win this game. And I think they should and could, but something in me just keeps screaming, it doesn't feel right. And I'd be worried if I were you, Josh, for your team. They have such a good record. You've gone through so many ups and downs, but LA, the Rams here are I think going to be a tough competition, and I think they're somehow going to win this.
Yeah, we're kind of playing with house money this season. I had us winning 7 games. We won 13 games. So
at the beginning of the year, I think everybody I talked to said Minnesota will come in 4th in their division. That was everybody I talked to, because you know your guy got hurt. You're going in with Sam Darnold. Everybody had such a high opinion of Sam Darnold. New coach, right? Was he new this year?
It's his 3rd year.
It's his 3rd year, so not a new coach. But anyway, all the talk I heard was, oh, yeah, it's going to be boom, boom, Bears, then Vikings. Well, yeah, you've way surpassed those expectations.
Yeah, and I will say if Sam Darnold plays like he did against Detroit, then the Vikings have no shot. He was missing wide receivers and missing reads, kind of like we talked about earlier in the game.
And I think it happened because he started getting hit and he started getting pushed, and that's when he started going kind of crazy.
Yeah, the Lions blitzed almost on 60% of their defensive snaps, and they were able to kind of, like, Darnold has worked well against pressure typically when he's been able to step up in the pocket and step away. They started flooding the middle of the pocket and just doing the double A gap blitz, so that if the pressure from the outside got to him, he had nowhere to step up and he had to kind of run away, and that made a lot of his throws inaccurate. And like you said, it got into his head a little bit, and so he just started missing throw after throw after throw. If he makes those throws, if he plays just like regular Sam Darnold, the Vikings would have had like a 20-7 lead at halftime, and it would have been a weird, different ball game. But he played so poorly that it was 13-9 or 10-6 at halftime, and then that's when Detroit, like, Minnesota's defense could only hold on for so long. It was like sticking your finger in the wall of a dam. All that water is going to come flooding out eventually, and they just kind of fell apart the rest of the way when the offense couldn't build them the lead with the opportunities that the defense had provided early in the game. So if Darnold plays like that, season's over for the Minnesota Vikings. So here's hoping that was a mirage and not a trend.
What could be the saving grace is at halftime or somewhere in the middle of the second half of that game against Detroit, maybe one of the commentators said it, and I was thinking it is Kevin O'Connell, right? Blanked on the name for a second. Kevin O'Connell needs to start calling some really short passes because it seemed like Darnold was always trying to look down for the long pass, always trying to go to Justin Jefferson, and he needed to just like hit some people quick, get that ball out of his hands, and maybe he took some really good notes after that Detroit game and is like, all right, I'm going to make up some plans in case it's going crazy blitz like that against us again.
And they had the short concepts there a lot of the time. They ran mesh concepts more than I've ever seen them run mesh concepts in those kind of shallow crossers. And I think one of the problems was that bringing those AA blitzers early in the game forced Aaron Jones or Cam Akers not to be the hot read, because they had to, instead of being the hot read on a blitz, they had to come in to the middle and block, so they couldn't get out as quickly. So I think you can sacrifice that Aaron Jones as a blocker and make him a receiver if Minnesota goes up against Detroit again, because there was a lot of underneath spot stuff open if Jones could have leaked out and not be focused on blocking. So I think that might be the big adjustment that Minnesota makes, is saying, here, you don't have to pick up this blitz. If extra guys come and we don't have it picked up, we're just going to loft it out to you and you're going to pick up 6-7 yards. I think that's what they need to do. And Darnold, his one of his biggest critiques that I've had of him this season is that he's the exact opposite of Kirk Cousins in that he hardly ever looks at the underneath stuff, even when it's there. He's always, even when Kevin O'Connell calls plays that have a couple of routes going underneath, he's always looking deep downfield. Kirk Cousins was always looking underneath first and then deep downfield. I'd rather have the Sam Darnold style of play, but sometimes, like we saw against Detroit, that's gonna kind of work to your detriment.
Well, there it is, guys. Your wild card weekend slate. Who we think will come out on top of each of those, but the games still have to be played. So I think we're going to let that be it for today. But next week, do come back because we're going to be here and we're going to talk about all these games that just ended and talk about the ones coming up after that. Thanks for joining us today on the Football Fandemic. Bye now, all.